the Summer Institute is really intense intellectually and otherwise, and I can report that it is, at least it is for me, and maybe not just for me. So what's the idea? The idea is to build an intellectual community that is committed to civic ideals and to institutionalize that intellectual community, and that means basically to build a field or a discipline of civic studies. So the Summer Institute are first baby steps toward something we might call a discipline of civic studies. And I like to just put it bluntly, there ought to be a discipline of civic studies, a discipline that is really intellectually serious, that is really practically serious, that is serious about finding out what the facts are that are relevant to civic ideals. It is serious about articulating and justifying ideals. It is serious about exploring strategies and tactics of the kind Jamila last night talked about. So the floor belongs to the participants in this year's Summer Institute of Civic Studies. Jeff.
So, hey everyone, my name's Jeff. I'm from Victoria, BC, and I had the pleasure of being part of the Summer Institute this year, and it was quite wonderful to meet people, to hang out, and yeah, just to be quite engaged over the last couple of weeks. So Carol and I thought, Carol does sort of the top down, I'm the bottom up part of the idea of the just kind of introducing that institute. So you probably have met a few of us, but there's roughly 20 of us, and from a real diverse range of fields. Civic youth education, municipal politics, rhetoric, rhetoric, forgive me, that's a bad move to make for saying that, talking to them. Journalism, all over the field. So that was pretty cool, actually, and it's a real mix of nice academic and practice. And actually, as a student, I thought the model of education was really nice because there was no marks. It was really just a lot of reading and stimulation, which was cool. And I thought something I wanted to emphasize with the Institute was it was neat to find links between people that you didn't really know the links were there. And I know Peter talked about this. There's a lot of work being done that could be classified as sort of civic, right? Civically engaged, civic studies, that people don't necessarily know is going on in different areas. So to make those connections is pretty neat. And I find I'm just continually surprised with those type of connections. And something I kind of really wanted to say was that, emphasizing that Carol said, was that the intention of making a community, and I know in the past there's been about 60 or so alumni from this institute, and people have stayed in various ways connected to each other. And I know this year seems like we're pretty keen on actually continuing that community, so we have a few programs set up to just have intellectual exchanges throughout the year, and hopefully that really, I think, not hopefully, that's somewhat not totally positive. It will, I'm pretty sure it will happen. So, but on behalf of everyone, I just kind of want to say thanks to Peter and Carol, for having the vision of putting it together is really great. So. And I know they've emphasized that it was intense, but if you've spent any time with them, they're quite the witty duo, and they are exceedingly entertaining to be around too. So my thanks goes out for that too. So, anyways, and I'm going to pass it off to a couple more people who are just going to introduce what's going on this morning.
So my name is Rashawn. This is my friend Julie. We are here to just introduce a little activity we want to have all of us go through. So we all wanted to have our voices heard from this, and it was hard to decide kind of how to use this 45 minutes we've been given. But we decided that we were going to all come up with a quote or some kind of theme that had resonated with us from the conference, from our institute, and from the readings. And then we have we've written all those down on big Post-it notes and put them outside on the walls. And so what we are asking for in this session is, we want to have people go look at these quotes. We're going to give you about 10 minutes. We only have 45 minutes. We'll probably go a little bit over, but that's okay. It's not okay. Carl is. But we want you to examine these quotes for about 10 minutes and then bring ideas back to your tables for discussion. And while you're out there in the gallery, we would like you to think about these two questions. Which of these quotes or segments resonates most with you, and why might that be? Think about this in terms of your work, your theory, your practice, whatever it is that you're doing in, we keep saying, this work. And come back with ideas about what it means for you, and we're going to share for a little bit and then continue forward. And Julie's going to explain the second half.
So you have about 10 minutes to go outside, walk around, find one that resonates with you, and then come back, and then I'll let you know what's going to happen in the next part. So come back, please, by...
And...
Oh,
you can, if you would like. There's Post-it notes spread out throughout your tables. Please feel free to write something down. There's also markers hanging on the Post-it notes themselves in some. So feel free to write, but we will have... You can. They will also be circulating on a PowerPoint so that you can see them and be reminded. But if one sticks with you, do try to remember something about it. And feel free to comment, but we're going to leave these up for all day so you can comment throughout the whole conference on the actual sheets of paper. So we're going to be back in about 10. We'll let you know. Okay, so I hope everyone enjoyed the gallery walk. Julie is going to explain the next part of the activity to us, so if you'll please give her your attention, we would really appreciate it.
hi, everybody. I hope you had a chance to review all of the quotes we had out there. And I don't know if we said, these are things that resonated with us from the readings that we did, also from the discussion. So there's a mix of all different kinds of folks. And what we'd like you to do now is to think about the quote that resonated with you, and you thought about why it resonated with you. And now I'd like you to relate it to two things, in your small group and in discussion. One is, how does this idea relate to the conference theme of frontiers of democracy? How does it relate to what we're talking about today? And then how does this idea relate to your own work in civic practice, theory, or education? So we're going to take about 10 minutes to just sort of talk in small groups, and then we're going to share out a little bit at the end. We're going to ask you to actually pose a question to the larger group based on your small group discussion. So take about 10 minutes to sit and discuss these two questions in your small group. All right, thank you, everybody. I'd like to bring you back for a larger group conversation. I know it's hard to, the great thing is we're going to be together for the next day and a half, so hopefully you guys will continue the conversations that you've started in your small group in some other space and over lunch and all of that. So but what we want to do right now is to have every table pose a question out to the conference for us to consider based on your conversation. Katie over here is going to take notes so that we have the questions posted and we can revisit them throughout the conference. And so which table would like to start? All right, we've got the table in the back. And please stand up and speak really, unless we can bring this microphone around. Does this move? This moves. This moves.
So Julie's going to bring the microphone up there, and I'm going to stay down here with the microphone. And we're going to just pass them around.
All right, so hi, we were table number 1, and so we talked a lot about engaging people in post-secondary success and threw out a lot of different terms. And we realized when we were having these conversations, we were all using words like service, engagement, community, success, things like that. But we all were wondering whether or not we were meaning the same thing. So I guess our overarching question was, how do we come up with a common language, one that we can all understand in our respective fields?
Great, thank you, Jody. Next, what other tables have questions that they would like to offer up for us?
Maybe somebody back here.
Not everyone at once. Do you have? Here we go. Okay, so our table up here has one. Do you? Oh, sorry. Go. Okay, go ahead. Tell us about it, Mike. Oh, wow, the whole table has the comment.
Ready? Yep. Okay. Power and direction.
Head and heart.
Who? How? Us?
Wonderful. A little performance piece.
Extra
All right, so we
points
have
for creativity.
The table down here had one. Are you the spokesman?
Our table's question is, how do we institutionalize civic dialogue and ensure it's part of the decision-making process?
Wonderful question. Thank you.
And I think you guys want to go next?
Our conversation sort of took a lot of different turns. We touched on the individual, the collective, and structural elements of change. And one of the questions, actually two of the questions that emerged were, how can we harness collective energy for maximum impact while respecting legitimate interests of individual organizations and communities? And then a larger something to contemplate for the rest of our lives. Who is ultimately responsible?
Wonderful question. Thank you. We're having our two lovely Vanna Whites up here record, but we hope that people also have written versions of these because it's really hard to catch all of these so quickly. But who's next?
And I'm going to actually ask everybody to repeat their question since not everybody hears it the first time around.
Right.
Okay, so I'm Meredith, and I was lovingly elected as our representative from our table. We talked a lot about this idea of power and also feeling small in a very complex world and how you exercise that power. So our question is, how do you change the exercise of power so that it's shared, especially in the context of an ever-growing complex world? Yes. So, how do you change the exercise of power so that it's shared, especially in the context of an ever-growing, complex world? It is.
We're all thinking right
Wonderful.
now.
Thank you so much.
We've got another table back here.
All right. My name's Scott, and I'm representing this table. And the question is, how might we better cultivate and curate information for the advancement of positive and meaningful civic life? And I'll repeat it. How might we better cultivate and curate information for the advancement of positive and meaningful civic life?
Wonderful. Thank you. And for those of you frantically writing, we're also going to have these posted up all day, so you'll have time.
Would you like to?
Next.
Yes, we have three questions actually, and I think they're related.
One is never enough, right?
They're related. So the first one is, how do you navigate, or how do we navigate the tension between idealism and pragmatism? And related to that is hope helping or hurting, and what is the right kind of hope? So
Wow.
the connection between those two.
I'm sorry, can you repeat those one more time?
Yes. How do we navigate the tension between idealism and pragmatism? Is hope helping or hurting? And what is the right kind of hope?
Profound. Thank you very much. Were you folks ready? Yeah?
Ours relates to what Scott's table was talking about. So we were grappling with the observation that power gets to define what counts as knowledge. And our question is, in what ways can knowledge be developed and shared to shape the current power structure?
Can you say it one more time?
In what ways can knowledge be developed and shared to shape the current power structure?
Thank you. Next.
We spent a lot of time focusing on the quota around the spiritual dimension of politics and process, and so the questions that came out of that were, how do we support spirituality in process? Spirituality being a thoughtful, deliberative system of values, whether or not they are religiously motivated. And then the question that came out of that then was, what are the values, beliefs, and behaviors that need to be held up in this work to promote both respect and sustainability?
Wonderful. Can you repeat that one more time?
I have it written down. You can have this.
Can you just repeat it?
The second part?
The whole thing.
How do we support spirituality in process? Spirituality being a thoughtful, deliberate system of values, whether or not they are religiously motivated. And what are the values, beliefs, and behaviors that need to be held up in this work to promote both respect and sustainability?
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, dissertation I'm hearing. We've got the next one.
My name is Daniel. I guess I'm representing this table. So we talked a lot about, we don't really have a question, but a tension. So we talked a lot about the need for a civic science and having ways to really know what we're looking for in terms of metrics and outcomes. But then the concern is that, the Peter Drucker quote, what gets measured gets managed, and sometimes that can sort of corrupt the very measures. And then the other question, the other sort of tension being what gets measured is what's elevated in importance at the expense of other things necessarily, and sort of how do you resolve that?
Excellent, thank you. Are we all done back there? Have you? Oh, I'm sorry.
It's your table. Hi, I'm Rachel, and our question, we talked a lot about a great many quotes. People had picked just a wide range, but we ended up with the following question. Is it best to work within the system for change via traditional means, voting, participatory democracy, or is it better to work outside of the system for change? And we talked about the Occupy movement as one example of that, the Tea Party movement as an example of that started outside the movement and is now inside the movement. And so that political efficacy. So to repeat the question, is it best to work within the system for change via voting and other democratic processes, or is it better to work outside the system for change via movements like Tea Party and Occupy?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for taking.
Well, we have one more. Yeah.
Go to the spokesperson.
Okay, last one here. Oh, no, we have two more. I'm sorry. You have how many?
You need less.
Okay, so I guess the main question out of our group discussion, it's kind of a broader question that encompasses some of these up here, but it's just a basic, what should be the role of the citizen in the public?
Great, thank you. How many questions do you guys have?
We have a list. We have tried to fit it all into one.
You couldn't come to consensus on it, huh?
Talked about a lot of tensions. Yes, lots of good ideas here.
Okay, go ahead.
So our question, how do we engage in a national conversation on the tensions of democracy? Individualism and the common good, equality and liberty, and participatory and representative systems without or despite it becoming polarized.
Can you repeat that one more time?
I'll repeat that again. It's a good thing I have this written down. Yeah. How do we engage in a national conversation on the tensions of democracy? Individualism and the common good, equality and liberty, and participatory and representative systems without or despite it being polarized.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we got all the tables, right? Okay, well, go ahead and give yourselves a hand. That was a wonderful process. Thank you so much. Thank you, Carl and Peter, for tolerating our time, and thank all of you for participating. This was a wonderful, and we, from the Civic Institute to you, thank you for allowing us some time to work with you and have a conversation.
And thank you for engaging in that dialogue with us. This is what we've been doing the last few weeks. I'm really excited to have some, to get beyond my own frame that I bring to a conference like this and to have some collective frames that have surfaced from the group. So thank you for taking the time to do this.
So thank you for the participants. It was a terrific session. And I stand corrected. Civic studies is really serious and really fun. Matt.
Thank you. I'm Matt Leininger, Director of the Deliberative Democracy Consortium. And in that capacity, I work to help this exciting array of nonprofit organizations and public officials and academics wrestle with some of the big challenges facing democracy today, and I also sweep out the place. Pay no attention to the men behind the curtain. They're simply queuing things up for the next bit here. Let me give you a couple of housekeeping things. One is the list over there in the corner of topics for the open space segment between 4 and 5 is filling up. We already have a newsprint page and a half of topics. Of course, that's partly because Pat Scully's brief description of the Participedia breakout has taken up a half a page of newsprint all by itself. We will remind Pat that it's only a 60-minute, not a 4-hour session. The other housekeeping thing is we are indeed Twittering as we go. We'll show the Twitter fall, I think, at lunch and later on in the conference, but the hashtag is #DemFront if you don't have that. So as soon as things go well here, we have 3 presentations on the docket. We're actually going to have to move one. But so that what we have on the docket are 2 recorded presentations and 1 live one. The 3 people are Valerie Lemmy, who's a former city manager of Cincinnati, Ohio, and currently a congressional staffer for U.S. Representative Mike Turner. Then Mira Levinson, who is at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And then the third is Brad Lander, who's a New York City councilman, and he's live here. We assume there'll be no technical problems with him. So for Valerie's presentation, I guess, still have some trouble with the audio, so we're going to actually move that to one of the later slots in the conference, which is fine. We have flexibility that way. So we're going to hear first from Mira Levinson, and I'll say that her presentation, like Valerie's, is made specifically for us. I mean, she would really love to be here. She's in New Mexico, unfortunately, but what you're going to see from her, and I think it'll be obvious, is kind of a message, a 10-minute presentation made specifically for this conference. So, part of what she's going to be talking about is her terrific new book, which is called No Citizen Left Behind. So we'll have 10 minutes from her, and then we'll go immediately to Brad Lander, who in his capacity as a city councilman in New York has brought the practice of participatory budgeting to his ward on a big scale over the last year or two, giving this global emerging democratic practice of participatory budgeting a Brooklyn accent. So we'll hear a lot more about that. So if we're ready, we'll start with Mira Levinson.